Good evening, families, and welcome to our Parent and Family Programs webinar series. My name is Heather Deer, and I am the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs here at William & Mary. Somehow, it is already the last week of classes for your student with finals just around the corner. With the compressed semester and other outside circumstances, this has been a challenging semester for many students, and we want to support you and your student in finishing the semester strong. Tonight, we will be discussing ways your student can fight work fatigue and reach the semester's finish line. We will also touch base on ways your student can recharge over winter break and come out prepared for the spring semester. Before I turn it over to our guest speaker, I do want to ensure that they have a proper introduction. Joining us this evening is Dr. Kelly Crace. Kelly is the Associate Vice President for Health and Wellness and the Director for the Center for Mindfulness and Authentic Excellence at William & Mary. He is a licensed psychologist and the co-author of Authentic Excellence, Flourishing and Resilience in a Relentless World, and the Life Values Inventory. He has published and presented in the areas of values, flourishing, and resilience, life role development and transition, and organizational development. He is the president of Applied Psychology Resources and has conducted over 3,000 seminars for organizations. He has served as director of 2 college mental health centers at Duke University and William & Mary. He received his academic and clinical training from Vanderbilt University, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and Duke University. I'm so pleased to introduce Dr. Kelly Crace. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Heather. It's just a real pleasure and an honor to be here and a part of this conversation and to spend some time with our families together and to talk about this period, this very unusual period in our history in terms of a semester that's been like no other, and our ability to come together and learn from each other and grow through this period together despite the hardships and the challenges. I can't think of anything worse for the ears than to listen to that bio after the beautiful music that you were playing. I just got so caught up in the music. I felt like, we just need to listen to this for the next half hour. And that's really what we need to restore. But in terms of, let me shift something here on because I want to be able to see you too and to see others as I'm talking. I just really want to express my gratitude and appreciation for the families that have been courageous enough to support their adult student in coming here and being a part of our experience, those that are studying on campus, those that are studying remotely. It's been extraordinary. And they have helped us so much. Our students have just done a great job, and they've helped us learn. And it's been one of those things that's been very special despite it being very challenging. If we look at yesterday's normal, which yesterday by 2019, yesterday's normal was we were all overworked and stressed. Us as families, us as parents, us as staff and faculty and our students, we're used to a rhythm of stress and busyness that was challenging for us. But we had that rhythm about understanding it because it was somewhat predictable. We knew how to kind of predict our crunch times, but we also had predictable restorative times. And then when 2020 hit, what changed is it moved from overworked and stressed to exhausted and strained. And we do well under stress because we can even grow through stress. But when it went from uncertainty to collective uncertainty, where we were feeling it as an entire world, to then prolonged collective uncertainty. That's when, with no planned or predictable restorative times, that's when things move to strain, and strain is unsustainable. And so we need to be thoughtful and mindful about how do we manage these periods of finally getting from a compressed schedule to where we really have felt like since the very beginning of this, where we decided we were going to come back. I think part of us really needed to look at the aspect of what's next. And we geared up and we sprinted toward that first sprint and felt like, okay, let's just get to this next sprint. Let's get on campus. Let's get our guidelines down. And then the next week there was another sprint that we didn't plan. And the next week there was another sprint. And what I have felt from our students and all of us is we haven't stopped sprinting for an entire semester. And so they're tired, they're strained, and so are we as families and parents. I'm coming from my home, and just a few feet away is our large Italian round table, our dinner table, which is where we kind of symbolize our love and expression. Every conversation that's been meaningful has been around that table. And our two sons that are in their 30s, them and their partners will not be joining us for Thanksgiving because of the pandemic and where they are in their life right now, and the difficulty being able to travel here under pandemic conditions. And so this will be a Thanksgiving that's been different, will be different for all of us. But we've developed the talent and skill to Zoom. So we will have a Zoom Thanksgiving. You have to find those moments that matter to you, even though they are different. Well, your adult students are going to be coming home pretty tired and pretty burned out and needing to make sure that this is a restorative time. They will need to be intentional about it, because it's hard to come off this pace. It's very easy to just kind of keep this pace going. So what do we do about that? Well, I want to share with you for about 5 minutes, and then I want us to get into, I'm going to give you a loving challenge of 5 things that I want you to be mindful of, because you're are wonderful models for our students, and also for you to be able to mentor and teach them, because these are the things that we're talking to our students about here. But I want to give you a sense of context, though, as to why also, and those of you that have heard me speak before, one, my apologies, but secondly, being able to understand kind of what we're doing with our framework here with students to help them move to this deeper, authentic level of fulfillment and resilience. I'm going to share with you a few slides and show you a backdrop of kind of what we're talking about. And then I want to leave you with a few strategies to think about of how do we manage burnout in a relentless world? How do we do that how do we be healthy in burnout conditions is essentially what we're looking at. So Heather, if I may, I'm going to share the screen. When you tell
Of
me if
course.
everything is looking the way that it should. Let me bring it up. Can you see that okay?
I see it.
All right, great. So what I want to share with you is a particular vulnerability that we all have as humans, but is particularly prevalent among our young adults today, and something we should always be mindful of to be able to understand the context of why our children, our adult children, may feel a sense of strain or stress when all they do. And it's essentially what happens to your brain when something becomes important to you. Once something matters, once something or someone matters to you, there's 3 unavoidable truths that you can't escape. The first is uncertainty. Truth is, you never completely control everything that goes into something that matters to you. There's always a chance you could fail or lose that thing or person of importance. And if you did, there would be a cost. You would hurt in some way. You would pay a cost in some way. We also know in today's time that anytime we engage in something that matters to us, we're aware that people are forming opinions about it. They're watching us, and they're at some level wondering and judging and evaluating how we're doing. If you dare to care, you can't avoid these 3 things. These 3 things are a part of caring. And when these 3 things get activated, this is the result. You feel a sense of fear of failure, which is pressure. We experience this as psychological pressure, which is not a bad thing, but it's essentially the part of your brain that gets activated when we're aware of 2 concurrent things. 1, I care, and secondly, uncertainty about what I care about. And if we were to naturally respond to that values-based fear, that values-based pressure, we tend to go in one of 2 directions. We either over-control and master, or we avoid and escape until it has to be done. We learned in our research on flourishing that perfectionism and procrastination are the neurologically natural ways we cope with values-based fear. This is fully human. We all do it, but it's really important to understand that our young adults have become specialists and experts at this model. This is called the fear-based model of excellence because you can attain excellence with it. When we move into this perfectionism and procrastination kind of way of being that's fear-based now, what started with our values has now become eclipsed with kind of a fear-based model of excellence. What you're doing is you're kicking your body into a different gear of motivation and focus. That's why a lot of people say, I wait until the last minute because I work better under pressure. You actually don't, but that's what you're feeling. You're feeling that different gear. What's important to recognize is this generation of young adults has the highest incidence of fear of failure than any other previous generation because they no longer want to succeed. This generation of young adults wants to succeed in something that matters to them. And in that, what they also recognize is the competition for those meaningful opportunities has never been more fierce. So importance is higher, uncertainty is higher, and therefore fear is higher. And they have been living with this for years. They have adopted the linear model. If I can do this, then it leads to the next step, and the next step, and the next step. And they have become experts by the time they reach our campus on controlling and avoiding their way to excellence. The interesting thing about this, though, is the fear-based model of excellence eventually hits a ceiling effect and an increasing cost. And it's in college when they will start to experience that ceiling effect and that increasing cost. Well, look at this year. Look at this year in terms of how all of this is amplified. Importance is amplified because they had to really dig deep and figure out, do I really want to do college this year? And do I really want to do college on campus? What should this look like? This was not an easy decision. And they had to dig deep into what really matters to them. And they stepped into daily uncertainty. So they have been worried. They have been anxious. And for many, they have managed this through either perfectionistic control or avoidance until they have to step into it. The interesting thing about this is with this reaching a ceiling effect, we have to find deeper ways of being able to look at this. So we recognize that there's this dynamic relationship with values and fear. You can't have one without the other. I can't care about anything without also being reminded that I don't completely control everything I care about. So uncertainty will always accompany those values, and therefore fear will come along with it. And I can't be afraid of anything I don't care about. So these are dynamic things that relate to each other, and you can't have one without the other. And that's the heart of our work with the Authentic Excellence Initiative, is about what have we learned from our research that can move someone beyond this fear-based model of excellence to a deeper form of authentic excellence, that actually people can be resilient through incredible pace and hardship and still be fulfilled and still be even more productive than they are through that fear-based model of excellence. This is what we teach our young adults. Every year, we have over 2,000 students voluntarily on their own volition go through this program. And this is what they go through. This is a part of what they experience. And we have multiple portals of entry for that. They can do it online, they can do it one-on-one, they can do it in workshops, they can take a course in it. There's many ways that they can do it. But essentially, here's what we take them through. We take them through a deeper level of thinking differently about values than they've thought about them before, and moving to this deeper level of understanding of creating a values relationship rather than values clarification. And then learning how to actually express and manage those values in a way that brings them to the cornerstone of adult self-esteem, which is a sense of integrity where my behavior lines up with what matters to me. Then we teach them how to manage fear differently. We actually teach them 6 strategies of managing fear differently other than control and avoidance. They already got that one down. But we move them beyond that and move them into advanced coping skills. I'm always bothered by how this generation of young adults gets labeled as the snowflake generation and a very fragile, non-resilient generation. It's not true. It doesn't hold up under our research at all. We find that these young adults to have been able to get here, they have already shown resilience. It's just in this relentless world of noise and change and pace and uncertainty, they need more advanced coping resilience so that they can match this increase in challenge and strain has to be matched by an increase in capacity to manage the things that are so uncertain. So we teach them a deeper level of resilience. And then we actually teach them how to train for flow. A lot of people have experienced the flow experience, but they don't feel like they can control it. You actually can. And we train them on the techniques and strategies that are about a deeper level of excellence. Well, tonight, what I want to share with you for just a couple of minutes is I want to share with you something that we learned. This research we've been involved in for the past 30 years. This has been my life's work as a psychologist. And I've learned so much from the various groups that we've worked with, from high school students to community college to university students to adult workers in very diverse organizations. One particular group we were working with, and one particular industry we were working with, were particular industries that were in high burnout conditions. And it was mainly with activist and advocacy-based organizations, so mission-based organizations, and particular industries in the business industry, such as accounting, where there's this period of absurd busyness, absurd stress, and then periods of lulls, which have become less frequent these days. It's kind of a high fever pitch throughout. But we looked at organizations that had a high vulnerability for burnout and high turnover rate. And we studied organizations that were able to flourish during this time. How did they maintain an ability to flourish during burnout conditions? And we saw that what we found is what we found to be true with all flourishing individuals, is there are no natural born flourishers. People that flourish work at it. They're very mindful about it. They're very intentional about it. And in that intentionality, the reason why they're so intentional is not because they don't get it or have trouble with the concepts. The concepts actually are not very complex. But what we've learned is they are intentional because our world doesn't foster it. Our world pulls us away from flourishing by giving us a lot of platitudes. I'll give you an example of a platitude that you'll hear every day. How many of you have heard the importance of striving for work-life balance? I mean, we hear this every day, that the secret to wellness is developing work-life balance. Striving for work-life balance does not predict flourishing. In fact, it gets in the way of flourishing. It actually predicts languishing, because our notion of balance basically results in every evening either us getting mad at ourselves for failing to balance or mad at the world for not allowing us to balance. And it's kind of insulting because it implies that in work-life balance, that an important part of your life is not attached to work. How many of us and how many of our adult students are actually learning to move toward a career that they can just clock in and clock out and not have to think? It's a deep part of their self-worth and their self-identity. People that flourish, they don't strive for work-life balance, they strive for work-life harmony. That essentially looks like every day they ask themselves at the beginning of every day, what's the right devotion of my time and energy? And one day it might be 90% this, 5% that, 5% this. But every day they ask that same question as if they've never asked it before, and they allow for the answer to be different every day. And that results in feeling more balanced, feeling more centered. They experience more centeredness and balance, but they don't strive for balance. Imagine an orchestra playing in a balanced way and how awful that would sound versus an orchestra playing in a harmonic way. Well, we found that intentionality is critical. Mindfulness is critical. And we found that people that are able to flourish during burnout conditions are mindful about 5 things every day. So I have this loving challenge. I'm going to walk you through these 5 things. And I want you to be intentional about this. In fact, here's the challenge. I want you to practice these things every day for the next 8 weeks through the semester. So actually, through the semester, it takes us around 10 weeks. So for the next 10 weeks, I want you to practice this every day. And then I want you to call me or email me. You'll have my contact information at the end of this. And I want you to tell me what you noticed. In addition, I want you to encourage your adult student to do the same. You don't have to tell them they need to, but invite them to. That's what we do with the Authentic Excellence Program. We invite them to avail themselves of this program. We don't tell them they need it. We just invite them whenever their wisdom says it's ready. Think about inviting them to these 5 things. So first, start every day with asking yourself, what matters to me today? And of those things, what matters most? So you clarify what matters to you, and then you stack them. You prioritize them. What matters most today? And what matters second? In other words, you start every day with a sense of purpose. The reason for that is we tend to live by fear and comfort. So we usually start off the day with what has to be done. And we just do all the have tos of the day, and then we seek comfort, have tos and comfort, which is fine. That works fine. But it doesn't prevent burnout. It actually fosters burnout when we kind of live at that neurological level of have tos and comfort, crisis and regulation. We are a purposeful relational species. And so for us to flourish, we must start with a sense of purpose, which moves us to a deeper level of motivation. And it's being open to what that is. During the semester break, one of the things that may matter to us is to get rest or to expand our sleeping time. Whatever it is, every day ask, what matters to me today? And of that, what matters most? So step into purpose every day. Mindfully step into purpose every day. Secondly, step into something enjoyable every day. It's really important. We found that people that flourish during burnout conditions, no matter how busy they are, even if it only takes 30 seconds, they will step into they'll bring want to the foreground. In all of the shoulds of their day, they bring want to the foreground. And they'll do something that's enjoyable, even if it's just for a few seconds or even more longer when it allows. But they step into something enjoyable every day. The next thing is make sure you step into something healthy every day. Now, the difference about this is being able to distinguish the difference between healthy self-care and soothing. Because when we're under strain and when we are feeling feelings of burnout, symptoms of burnout, it's very easy for us to seek to soothe. Now, there's nothing wrong with soothing per se, but there's a real vulnerability with soothing. And the difference between soothing and self-care is essentially the intentionality behind it. Whenever we seek to soothe during times of strain, that intention can drift to a need. And the need to soothe is where we can run into trouble, because whenever I need to soothe, what you've basically shifted into is you've shifted into a need to feel better. And therefore, what you're doing is trying to change brain chemistry as soon as possible. Because what you're saying is, I don't feel good. I need to feel better. And the thing I want to do then is shift my brain chemistry into feeling better as soon as possible. And there are only 5 ways to quickly change brain chemistry. And that's food, drugs, sex, pain, and compelling entertainment. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with those 5 things. Even pain, like the pain of exercise. There's nothing wrong with any of those 5 things. However, when we're addressing them with the intention of needing to feel better, we don't tend to moderate those things well. And they can get out of hand, because what we're doing then is trying to escape and chasing comfort. And when that happens, it can get away from us. Instead, you want to focus on healthy self-care, because the difference between soothing and self-care is soothing, the intention is to feel better. With self-care, the intention is to be healthy. And there are several ways to be healthy. Think of the categories of different ways to be healthy. You can go to verbal expression, which is converting emotional energy to verbal expression, talking with someone that feels safe and trustworthy. Physical expression, converting emotional energy to physical activity, from vigorous activity to breath work. Creative expression is a wonderful form of healthy self-care. Meditative expression is a healthy form of self-care. That's when we're focusing on mindfulness, meditation, deep relaxation, prayer, whatever's consistent with your value system. It can be a serene kind of meditative thing. And these things can be combined. I may want to take a walk out in nature because I find it meditative and serene. And I love to do that with my partner, to where when we can do that together, it has a deeper sense of meaning. It also is good to just sometimes take a temporary break from our stress. That's when you're putting it on the shelf and just taking a step away from it for a while. That's when you go out with your friends, but you don't talk about it. Or you go to a movie and restore through that. This is about engagement in restoration. With healthy self-care, you're engaging in something instead of escaping something with soothing. So step into health every day. And then one of the things that surprised us but was really interesting is people that flourish during burnout conditions also mindfully every day both give and receive encouragement. They do both. They make sure that at some point in the day, they seek some kind of support. And it's not only just emotional encouragement where that way to go, that's great. They'll just seek support in a lot of different ways. Someone to listen, someone to challenge how they think about things, someone to appreciate their effort, someone to give them some of their time and energy or their resources, or sometimes it is emotional support. But they'll seek that every day and they'll give it every day. And that's an important part of buffering us against burnout. But then the last thing, which is really the most important thing and the most neglected, is they will always end the day with taking a moment to appreciate and value where they stepped into these four things, where they stepped into purpose, where they stepped into enjoyment, where they stepped into healthy self-care, and where they stepped into encouragement. And the reason for that is, the reason why that's so important is that essentially transforms purpose into meaning. A lot of people think purpose and meaning are the same thing. They're a little bit different. They're close, but they're a little bit different. Purpose is motivational. Meaning is reflective. And so you want to start every day with purpose to build that sense of motivation and drive toward it. But at the end of every day, in order to bring that alive, we must take time to value and appreciate where we courageously stepped into purpose. And I say courage because the definition of courage is stepping into right things that are hard. Whenever you step into something that's right, but is hard, that's courageous. One of my favorite quotes from Dr. King was, heroism is the courage to act every day according to your values. That's heroic. And in these day and times, this is heroic. Doing these 5 things is very simple to understand. It's not complex. It's really hard to do. Very hard to do. And I look forward to seeing what you notice by practicing these things every day for the next 10 weeks. So we found that when you do these 5 things, purpose transforms into meaning. And that was the secret, that people that are working in high burnout conditions that flourish, they will say, I'm tired, or they'll say, I'm busy, but they're not hurried. There's a difference between busy and hurried. And what they'll talk about is they'll talk about the joy in their life as defined by meaning. So they don't define joy by how happy I am. They define a joyful life by how meaningful their life is. And that's the reflective piece. So that difference between purpose and meaning, like I may decide, Heather seems like just like a really neat colleague. I would like to spend more time with Heather. I would like to get to know Heather and learn from her more. And so that becomes my purpose. So now I'm motivated to spend more time with Heather. But it's not until I spend that time and actually take time at the end to reflect on that of whether I'll know it's meaningful. Because at the end of the day, I might have done that. And at the end of the day, it was like, well, that was a big dud. That wasn't near as meaningful as I thought it was going to be. Or it was like, yep, that it was just what I thought it was going to be. And now I want to move toward that. But it takes time to reflect on that. By the way, that's different than a gratitude journal. Taking time to appreciate and value what you found, where you stepped into those 4 things during the day. That's different than a gratitude journal. Gratitude journals are wonderful things. They're always good things to have in your life. But gratitude journals are often drift into things where we're grateful for things that have happened to us. Instead, I want you to take a minute and appreciate and value where you stepped in to these courageous things that matter to you. That is incredibly important and very neglected. It's the most neglected step in our busyness. So there's one other thing that I want you to think about too. This is an open educational resource that talks about our research around flourishing and values. And there's an instrument that's there that we spent over 10 years empirically developing from a scientific perspective. And it's a process that takes about 20 or 30 minutes, completely free to everyone. You can go in and go through the online assessment. It takes about 20 minutes, and it holds your data. But one of the things that we found this past summer with students that had gone through the Authentic Excellence program and then had to leave in the spring, many students wrote to me and said, guess what we've been doing? When we got caught with our families and we were all quarantined and everything, we all as a family went through the life values inventory and we talked about getting to know each other through the lens of our values. It's a very deep, rich conversation to get to know each other, especially now with your adult student. Being able to understand each other where they're always going to be your child and you're always going to be their parent. But cultivating a relationship among three adults and getting to know each other through the lens of their values and them getting to know you through the lens of your values can really be a very powerful thing. So if you're interested in this, I'm going to share a handout with Heather after this. And it's a list of discussion questions that you can go through around your results. In fact, my family, we do this every year. Since the kids were 13, every year we take the LVI together and then we come and have a time at the dinner table where we talk about our values and ask each other's questions. We do that every year, even during the times in their teenage years when they really needed their independence. They was like, are we going to do the LVI? And I was like, well, yesterday you acted like you didn't want to be around me at all. It's like, yeah, well, that's fine, but I want to do the LVI with you. So it's about being able to come together and have these conversations. I'll share that handout that has a list of discussion questions. And I don't want you to go through all the discussion questions. The nice thing to do is pass around the discussion questions and have each person pick one question that they like. So you may only get to 3 or 4 questions, but pick the one that speaks to you and have a conversations around your relationship with values. The important point of this, and the reason why I bring this up, one of the key ingredients to flourishing is having a paradigm shift around values. It's about moving from values clarification to values relationship. It's about moving from what my values are to what my values look like in my life. How are they live in my life? How do they work together? How do they conflict with each other? But it's about how are my values alive in my life? And it's a very rich conversation. So have the courage to every day and encourage your adult student to step into purpose, step into something enjoyable, do it with them, step into something healthy, do it together, step into encouragement, both giving and receiving, and take the time at the end of the day. And it doesn't have to be a 30-minute Zen self-love fest. It can be while you're brushing your teeth at the end of the day. But take time to appreciate and value where you stepped into those things. And then I look forward to hearing from you. If you take a screenshot of this, but we're also going to share the PowerPoint. I look forward to hearing from you in 10 weeks to tell me what you learned. And I look forward to learning from you in this. But let's open this up to questions and comments around this and see how we can bring your wisdom into this process. Heather, is it okay if we open it up? I haven't been able to follow the chat, so you can kind of guide me in that if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I'm here for, to help guide some Q&A. So I think for the most part, there are a few questions related to the Authentic Excellence Initiative, some interest in how do students get involved and learn more if maybe they aren't one of those 2,000 that annually self-select to go through that. So how can they learn more? And I'm guessing this will be a spring initiative for many students who are interested, but interested in knowing more.
That's right. So what we've tried to do is create multiple portals of invitation and multiple portals of entry. Like, for instance, we just recently started a new podcast called Ways to Flourish. We just dropped our 11th podcast broadcast this evening, which Charlie Foster talked about the student veteran experience. But all of these are brief little podcasts that take on a different strategy around flourishing, and they have a campus voice too. It usually includes a student and a wellness professional. But all it involves is to basically just reach out to me. All of our students have my email address, and they have it online. They can go and contact me at any time, but they basically contact me and let me know that, hey, I have an interest in this, and then we talk together to find out what's the best modality for them, whether it's in a course for credit, whether it's coming and talking with me individually. But the critical thing is respecting their wisdom as to when it's most right. I have students that their junior year will come and say, I heard you during orientation my freshman year. I've always been interested in doing this. but I just haven't been ready for it until now. Now I'm ready to engage. So I think it's really important to always make it available and keep dosing that information so that it keeps coming to their awareness in many ways. But this might be the right path for them, but it may be another path. One of the things that we do around the vision of integrative wellness is we really respect the personal and cultural lens of how each student defines wellness for them. So for some, it might be the Authentic Excellence program. For others, it might be our mindfulness course or our yoga course or our ecotherapy and outdoors, or it might be involved in community engagement. Whatever it is, what does their personal and cultural lens inform them as to what wellness looks like? Our job is to make sure we have an opportunity for each one of those lenses so that they can find something for them.
And I'm sharing a few links here in the chat of things that you mentioned, the Ways to Flourish podcast, where they can learn more about the Authentic Excellence Initiative and generally just wellness at William & Mary and the 8 dimensions and all of the offerings that we have for students. So those are
Yeah,
in the chat if
I hope
people
they
are
can.
interested.
I hope they also will go to our virtual wellness site, because we were one of the first universities in the country that as soon as spring break happened and they weren't coming back, within a week we pivoted and created a virtual wellness site where we have offered live programs every day, recorded programs at every chapter and every lens of wellness, from creative art therapy to brief meditation and mindfulness to outdoor experiences. It's been something that thousands of individuals have gone and really benefited from. And it connects the students that are studying remotely to our community. And I hope that the students and parents will go on the virtual wellness site during the break and continue with some of the programs.
Definitely. There was something you touched on earlier that I wanted to circle back to and maybe
Yeah.
expand on a little bit. This very unique transition of students coming right off of final exams into, for some, a major holiday, which is at times can be an interesting experience for maybe our first year students who are coming home for the first time for a long break. And so wondering, what advice do you have for our families and supporters as they navigate their student coming right off of final exams to a long break?
This is something that's so very different. The unique thing about this year is, one, finishing the semester before they go to Thanksgiving and having no fall break and being very busy during the weekends. One of the things our students have talked about is, because of the compressed schedule, they felt like they haven't had the weekends off because they're still doing so much with the academic courses. But the very unique thing too, this is the very first time we've ever had an election around final exams. And as you know, things are still very up in the air in terms of, this is not clear and convincing. This is prolonged. We're still kind of seeing how things shake out. And so this is going to be on everybody's mind too, which can often be a topic of conversation, and people can have varying degrees of perspectives on things. I think the hardest thing about this for them is, developmentally, they have come into a very independent, autonomous environment, which is developmentally very important for them. It supports their sense of independence, and yet keeps them tethered to home, because they still need us as parents. They still need us as families to support and encourage their independence. But there's an interesting thing that often happens between first year and second year Thanksgivings versus junior and senior year Thanksgivings, is in that taste of independence and autonomy, it will be important often developmentally for students to assert that when they come home. And asserting that when they feel like it's been a good pace is one thing. Asserting that after being exhausted and their emotional tolerance is worn thin, they've been activated by the election just a week ago, all of these things are heightened. And so they may be a little bit on edge, and at the same time really want to assert their sense of autonomy and independence. And it's about understanding that to be developmentally important. It's still about recognizing that they're still coming back home, and home needs to have boundaries too. But it needs to not be in this power control of, when you're home, house rules, home rules, and moving right back into this power shift. It's actually respecting and saying, hey, let's have a conversation about what would make this healthy for us as three adults together, including other family members that may be there. But but it's about being able to say, what would make this healthy and restorative for you? And also for us to be able to share what would be healthy and restorative for us as parents. So as adults, you have this adult conversation of how do we come back together and live together as three adults in a healthy way? And you compromise and you work with each other and you talk as adults to kind of work out a plan that feels really healthy for everyone involved. It respects their autonomy while also acknowledging your autonomy and your boundaries in your home. More than anything, it's about open communication and allowing things to be a little awkward and a little messy at first, without necessarily enabling to where you get everything you want. How do we create this environment to have everything you want and let's put us on the background? No, it's coming together and sharing our wants and our values together and being able to work that out.
Definitely. That communication piece is so important, and helping establish expectations for one another can really help ease this transition. That's one of my largest pieces of advice for families. Even during a normal year, when they would navigate that first break at home, is just, it's okay to sit down and talk about it, right?
Yes.
And share with one another, this is how I thought break would go, and these are the things I thought we could do as a family, and seeing, does your students' expectations match those? Where do we have a conversation about that and really talk as a family about what this is going to look like?
Yeah. And it's also about not getting too far ahead. One of the things that can happen is when someone's really stretched really thin and been on a high pace, they can continue that pace and still keep thinking ahead of themselves, or they'll get sick. How many times have we ever pushed ourselves during a high stress period, and then when we finally come down off of it, then we get sick because our immune systems are shot? These 5 steps that I talked about are designed to restore our immune systems as well, to recharge our batteries. But it's also important to recognize too that they're still coming back under COVID conditions. They're still coming home. And it's about honoring a both and. Because under normal circumstances, they'd be coming back and they would want to connect with their friends. They would want to get with their friends, be with them, catch up with each other, touch each other, embrace each other. That is such a part of connection. And this is going to be different. And so you have to honor the grief of that. You have to honor the loss of what will we not be able to do as a result of these restrictions, and continue with creativity. That just because it's not necessarily how I want it, I can still have something that matters to me. So how do I creatively and safely and healthfully connect with my family and with my friends back at home in a way that is important? That gets at the difference between preferences and expectations. We may prefer something to be a certain way, but when it's a preference, there's still flexibility around it. There's still adaptability around it. When it becomes an expectation, that brings in the rigidity, and our emotional reaction is based on the difference between those expectations and reality. And that's when it gets unhealthy. So it's okay to honor the preference of, gosh, I wish this were different, or I wish I could go hang out, or I wish I could do this. And it's about, yes, I wish you could do that too. And I understand how hard that is. And how do we creatively find a way that's still meaningful, that still matters to you, even if it's not exactly how you want?
I think that's wonderful advice. Sarah, actually, we have a couple questions in the chat that I've missed. Carrie asked, how do we allow our kids to unwind and rest, but still encourage them to do things like think about next summer, job, internships, or is the lesson here that we should back off and let them take control of their own time?
I think it's about having those kind of conversations, but you also need to own it as yours. So if you're worried about what they're going to do for internships, it's about just saying that, rather than just saying, you need to start thinking about internships. It's about during times when you have these conversations, you can say, so in all this busyness, has there been any room at all in your head to think about the summer or think about internships? And if the answer is no, it's like, okay, all right, that's great. But it's already showing that, okay, that's something that's on your mind, but you don't have to be able to say you need to do this. But it really does get at this aspect of what we learned about people that don't burn out. they don't just shut down and only attend to wants. It's a foreground background thing. So what they've been doing right now for the past several weeks is their shoulds have been dominating their lives. Should has been foreground, wants have been background. To fully restore, you got to switch that and bring wants to the foreground, but that doesn't mean get rid of shoulds. That doesn't mean get rid of purpose. We actually found, related to those 5 things, that people that stay restored, they do something of purpose every day, and they do something that's restful and enjoyable. So you essentially want to encourage them to bring wants to the foreground, but it not just be a dichotomized all or nothing type thing. It's about inviting them to want. Now, when they first get back, they're probably going to be exhausted. And so being able to give them some time to just, hey, let it be all want tos. What do you want to do? I want to sleep all day. Okay, I'll wake up tomorrow. It's just being able to work with them. What's your favorite meal? How can I provide that for you? So being able to honor their wants and also being able to share with them, let's think about things that would be purposeful. Let's think about things that would matter to us. That might be thinking about summer, but it may not be thinking about summer. And it doesn't have to be this kind of linear, okay, we got to get this in gear for the next step and get this in gear for the next step. This was such an unusual semester. We have to honor that by not getting in our normal narrative of what's next. They already know there are things ahead of them. They need to have a full tank and a recharged battery to be able to think thoughtfully about them in a way that's values congruent instead of in an anxious, stressed way. The other thing to remember is own it. Whose stress is this? Is this more your stress as a parent, or is it their stress? If it's their stress, they're going to bring it up and you can be supportive and helpful with them. If it's your stress, that's for you to manage. Their job is not for them to take away your stress. Your stress is for yours to manage, just like you're helping them manage their stress.
Wonderful. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. I think we could probably talk for a really long time, but I am going to let you go, Kelly, eventually. So I just do want to ask, really to close us out, the next few days for our students is going to be some of the busiest that they will experience this semester, and I feel like that in many ways this is kind of the last stretch of the sprint for them, and I am hearing it from students, and I'm sure that you're hearing it from students as well. If families receive a phone call this weekend or next week as they start to engage in finals, and it's, I'm so busy, I'm so tired, this is really hard, what kind of in the moment advice can we give our students to help them really finish this out?
Yeah, communicate 2 things from them. Recognize as parents that we have a natural vulnerability, that when our children are upset or have a problem, our natural way of wanting to help is to fix the problem for them or rescue them from those emotions. And that's what makes us feel better, is when we can do that. Essentially, when your adult student calls and is turning to you for support, the best thing to ask is one simple question. First, listen to them. Listen the whole time. Don't, okay, I've got this, I know what it is, let me step in and fix this for you. Listen to it all. Listen to the full story. Ask questions if you don't understand the story. Ask questions until you get the full story. And then ask them one most important question, and that is, how can I be of best support to you right now? And be willing to be coached. Because sometimes they may just say, I just needed someone that knows me to hear me. I just needed you to hear it. I just needed to vent. Or they may ask for your head. I need you to solve this for me. I need your head. I need your wisdom. Can you help me figure this out? If they ask that, then by all means go and step in, but own it as don't say you need to do this. Say, in my head, when I think about this, this is where my mind goes as a possible solution. But it's your mind instead of here's what you need to do. And then you end that conversation with an important statement, which is, I just want you to know that I have complete faith and trust in you to be able to get through this difficult time. Because they will. They'll get through it. It may not be smooth. It may be bumpy. It may get worse the next day and they call you again. But if you can let them know that you know that they will get, you have faith in them, and that you trust that they will get through this very difficult period, and that it's okay if it's bumpy and awkward. That's an important message for them to know, because they will. They'll get through this. And they're a little beat up. They're a little bruised. They may have a few more bruises at the end. But I will tell you one thing about William & Mary students. They're just so freaking adorable. They final exams is almost more relieving than the regular semester for William & Mary students, because it gives them complete legitimacy to just study and play. Study and relate and play. It's study and have fun. And yes, having fun looks different these days, but they've still figured out how to have fun. Believe me, I know they have. They've told me how they have. During the semester, they not only have courses, but they have their extracurricular involvement, the things that they're trying to do in addition to their academics. Well, they can't do that during finals. They're not allowed. We're not allowed to assign those things during finals. So there's a purity about final exams that our students kind of love to step into. They also love to complain about it. So we call it brag planing at William & Mary, that they love to brag about how hard they have it. So you just want to take that for what it is and listen to it and admire how hard they're working, and admire how hard they're pushing themselves, and also sending that message of how can you take care of yourself today? And that's important.
Wonderful advice, Kelly. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for spending time with us as a family community this evening. I know we got really great comments in the chat, people very appreciative of your time, and I am also very appreciative of your time. So thank you for joining us. I will post these slides and the recording on our webinar's website so that everyone can access it. But thank you again, families, and please do have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thank you, families. And I express my gratitude for all you've done to prepare your adult student to come and grow with us and teach us a lot of things. You all have done a great job. So y'all need to restore a little bit too over the break.
Wonderful. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.